Hi, good evening everyone. My name is Peter Egan and I'm delighted to welcome you to my kitchen here in Surrey, and a big warm welcome to people from throughout the world who have checked in this evening to see this, I think, remarkable premiere of our film Keratin. And I'm just thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled to be an ambassador for this great charity. And now I'm just going to hand you over to the CEO and founder of Helping Rhinos, Simon Jones.
Thank you, Peter. Hello, everybody. Welcome to you all from wherever you are around the world. I believe that we've got people from all around the world watching. Welcome. And a little bit about Helping Rhinos. Just excuse me, we've got a little challenge going on there, right? A little bit about Helping Rhinos. We, in fact, next week will be celebrating our 12th anniversary. We work with a number of different organisations across Southern Africa and East Africa, predominantly at the minute in South Africa and Kenya. And our goal is to create rhino strongholds, areas of protected wild space for wildlife, and in particular with a focus on rhinos. And one area that we're working through there is in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa, which is where the film Keratin was filmed when Peter joined us last year. We work with the Zululand Rhino Orphanage there, and we'll maybe touch on this a little bit later on, but KwaZulu-Natal is now the real global epicenter of poaching. South Africa released their statistics for 2023 just yesterday, and it actually showed the level of poaching has gone up. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but over 60% of that poaching happens in KwaZulu-Natal. So it makes it very relevant in terms of the timing of this premiere of this film, because it will bring to life what the problem is, and hopefully some of what we're doing and what you saw out there, Peter, in terms of what we're doing to try and help combat that and create a future for rhino on our planet, which is our ultimate goal. You know, they really are still really in danger of going extinct within our lifetime, certainly within our children, grandchildren's lifetime. And we can't let that happen on our watch. So that's what we do at Helping Rhinos, really trying to protect these amazing, majestic animals that have been around since the dinosaurs. And we need to do all we can to make sure we're preserving their habitat, their environment, for them to thrive as we move forward. So I'm hoping this film will give you quite an insight into just a little piece of our work that Peter saw with us, and obviously then we'll be here afterwards, Peter, to take some Q&A. So if you're watching obviously all on YouTube, we have Olivia from the Helping Rhinos team with us here, who is monitoring all the comments and responding to you, and if the questions coming in, Peter and I will try and answer some of those immediately after the film.
Absolutely, and of course we have my great friend and colleague Andrew Telling sitting here with us around my table, who is in fact filming this event this evening. I made my first visit to Africa to KwaZulu-Natal just nearly a year ago in April this year with Andrew, who directed this remarkable film. I feel I can say that because I really truly believe it is a remarkable film. I was absolutely overwhelmed by my first visit by the amazing holistic care that the Helping Rhinos team give to these baby rhinos who are rescued and brought into maturity some 3 years in the orphanage. Simone, who was a calf rhino carer that I spent quite a lot of time with, is a remarkable woman and does great work, as indeed the whole team does. I felt in many ways blessed and inspired to have the opportunity to be up close with an animal which, as Simon just said, is actually prehistoric. And what I found most compelling and endearing was the fact that the baby rhino, which, as you will see, Lula, who was rescued on our first day, to see just how puppy-like in a way he was, and how within 24 hours he was connected to Simone as indeed a young puppy, an abandoned puppy might with any human being that shows them care and love. So I hope that you find this film as intriguing and as informative as I did. I think it is a remarkable piece of work, and I think it does pay duty and honour to the great work that Helping Rhinos is doing. So we're going to watch Keratin in just a moment or two, and please stick with it and enjoy it, and we'll see you afterwards.
You should just say as well, Peter, that while the film is playing, there will be about here a little code that you can scan on to make a donation to help support the work and look after the orphans and our work generally. So if you're moved and inspired to do so, please do scan the QR code here and look at, there's also text numbers, which I think is just the UK. If you're in the UK watching, you'll be able to text donate those numbers as well. So yeah, let's enjoy the film.
You know, it's strange mixed feelings one gets watching a procedure like this. This, of course, is the price this rhino has to pay to extend its life, and I find it deeply, deeply upsetting. It's March 2023, and I've made a 30-hour journey to the Zululand Rhino Orphanage in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. It's run by a highly skilled team who provide 24-hour care, and the rhinos are all happy, healthy, and attentive, almost dog-like. I've never been this close to a rhino before. Not many people have, and I've certainly never had the opportunity to bottle feed a calf. I have to remind myself why they're here. All have been rescued after the slaughter and death of their parents through poaching. What is so amazing is they look so at ease and like they haven't got a trouble in the world. They just look at, they're living in the moment, aren't they?
It's nice to see them at this phase.
Yeah.
Because every single one of them has had an ICU phase where they have been crying for mom, they have been through horrible trauma, they're stressed, they're, you know, in pain if they've had some issues. And it's not a nice process to see. And then once they're out here and they're happy and content, I mean, it's still heartbreaking because they should be with their moms. They shouldn't be a bunch of babies together like this.
Zululand Rhino Orphanage was created by the Zululand Conservation Trust with Helping Rhinos in 2017. Founded in 2012 by Simon Jones, Helping Rhinos have so far provided protection to over 1,000 rhinos. And Simon still remembers his very first and heartbreaking encounter.
What drew me into this world in the first place, I kind of always had a passion for conservation wildlife, and for reasons I always struggled to articulate the rhino specifically. But actually it was in 2012 when a rhino in the Eastern Cape on the Keratin Game Reserve was poached, we now call Tandy. So that was, I'd spent 6 weeks on a conservation program previously at the same reserve. So when that poaching happened, that was the final push for me to say, okay, enough's enough. Her and 2 other rhinos, there were 3 rhinos, they were on the plains. The poachers had come in and they'd not shot them with a normal rifle, they'd used tranquilizer guns. So when they were found in the following morning, one of them was dead. 2 of them that we get called Tandy and Temba were still alive. And then that heart-wrenching footage of the vet that we work with, Dr. William Folds, working, you know, getting to them and like, well, do we revive them? Do we have to euthanize them? But actually, let's do all we can. You know,
they'd remove the horn, both horns, and also part of her upper face.
Yeah, so just a hole. Both of them just had this hole in the face and skin hanging off where they'd taken machetes and just hacked away to get every last bit of horn that they could.
I mean, of course, the most remarkable thing is, as I understand it, was that Candy survived.
Not only has she survived, in fact, we're sitting here now in South Africa, and 2 days ago she had her 5th calf since that poaching incident.
How amazing.
So, you know, we use the caption, every rhino counts,
Yeah.
a lot. And, you know, and I think that's a prime example. People questioned whether we were spending too much money on one rhino.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that one rhino has already become actually 6 rhinos because her first calf has had a calf. So she's a grandmother now. To be able to get through that and then live the life of a normal rhino and you know, be helping the species continue.
And to put the scale and impact of rhino poaching into context, the entrance to the orphanage displays a poignant and visceral reminder. Can you explain to me what we're looking at here?
Yeah, so this is all skulls of rhinos who are obviously no longer with us.
Yeah.
A lot of these rhinos have been poached, and you can see in some of them here the big holes in the top of the skull there, where the poachers have dug right into the skull, the sinuses, to get every last little ounce of that rhino horn out of that head.
This should be like that.
Yeah.
And the growth plate will sit on top here.
Yeah.
And then this will be covered in skin, and then the horn will come out here.
Uh-huh.
So when we dehorn a rhino, we dehorn it above the growth plate,
Yeah.
and then everything underneath is still valuable horn.
Yes.
So the poachers want to take every last bit of it, so they'll hack into the face and expose the nasal cavity, which is quite sad because sometimes the animal doesn't die,
Yeah.
and it's left with this massive wound on its face and its nasal cavity open. And you can see there's a hole from a bullet, which is how this animal was killed.
Was killed, my goodness. With the unprecedented increase in rhino poaching over the last decade, there's been a huge rise in the number of rhino calves left orphaned. Sometimes, the rhino baby is left grieving over the loss of its mother, but on many occasions, the calf is seriously injured as the poachers attack the baby to stop it, interrupting them while they remove its mother's horn.
This is all the animals in the facility,
Yeah.
and we have successfully released 8 animals back into the wild.
And are they all tagged then when they go? Or...
They are, they either have a foot collar
Yeah.
or the new technology is a horn pod.
Oh, yeah.
And so that allows you to follow up on them. And we require that for at least 18 months to 2 years. After that, we know that they've settled nicely,
Yeah.
and then they can take it off
Take
and
it
they
off,
can
yeah.
be wild.
And the horn is basically keratin, is that right?
Exactly.
Like our fingernails,
Yes.
basically.
Yes.
So all of this hocus pocus about rhino horn is such rubbish.
Yes.
You could just tell the people who want it, if they want to make rhino horn cake, make the fingernail cake. Exactly, absolutely.
Yes, the other problem though is that it's also a status symbol. So because it's there isn't much of it, you know, there's a
Yeah.
limited amount of rhinos. It's very, very expensive.
Yeah.
So the people that do get a hold of it, they have quite a high status.
Yes,
So
horrible.
they tend to make these rhino horn dagger handles and things to display, not just
Yeah.
medicinal value.
Yeah.
Poaching has been the #1 threat and has been for the last 15 years. You know, we were losing, you know, back at 2014, 2015, we were losing 1,200 rhinos a year to poaching. You know, that's between 3 and 4 a day. We're still losing 1 a day. I mean, can you imagine, we've been out here today, you know, seeing some rhinos out in the wild, and yet for every day we've been here, the likelihood is that a rhino will have been killed by poachers somewhere.
In South Africa, game reserves are either privately owned or government state-owned. And it's surprising to learn that the fate of the rhino very much depends on which of the two they are born on.
If you just look at the stats, 244 rhinos were lost in state-owned parks last year, and only 16 in privately owned reserves in the province of KZN. And that is as a result of the fact that a lot of the private parks partner with entities such as Helping Rhinos in order to increase their efforts to protect and look after their rhino. The game has changed substantially.
Tell me why.
Well, before we were doing conservation work, and everyone that were working in parks were field rangers that were focused on animal behavior, monitoring, and obviously there was a level of protection. Now we're fighting a rhino war, and you have to be military trained to be
Yes.
able to do your job nowadays.
Yeah.
So the game's changed and the cost has become excessive. No one can even afford to look after animals anymore, and specifically rhino.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago we saw a significant disinvestment in rhino as a result of the fact that it was just become cost prohibitive to look after them and protect them.
Quite unexpectedly and unbeknown to us while we were filming, the orphanage was alerted to a 1-week-old calf in a neighbouring reserve that was close to death and in desperate need of their help. Within hours of receiving the call, the team had collected him and prepared a program of 24-hour intensive care.
We literally just received this new rhino orphan. It's a little male, estimated to be about 1 week old. He's just arrived. We've just managed to weigh him and put him inside the container. You can see he's really, really chilled. We haven't had to put a blindfold or earplugs in, and he's already had 500 mils of milk.
I get terribly moved when I see this, because this beautiful rhino is so vulnerable.
Yes.
What are you giving him at the moment?
I'm giving him a milk formula.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important for him to get the nutrients that he needs at this stage.
Yeah.
At this age, he won't be eating any solids, any grass, so he's fully reliant on getting his nutrients from milk. At this stage, this baby is very, very young, only a week old. He does have a very wet cough, so we're a little bit concerned that he is showing signs of pneumonia.
Looks like he's going to have a sleep now, is he?
He's quite content now,
Yeah.
so we say that they go into a little bit of a milk coma.
Yeah.
I would like it if he finished all his milk, but at this stage he's very small, so I think that's about as much as
Also,
he
he
can
seems to
handle.
know when he's had enough, doesn't
Yeah,
he? Yeah, which
yeah.
is absolutely lovely.
Yeah, you can see how full his tummy is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simon very kindly said that I could name him as I've come here for my first time to see the amazing work you do. I am very, very touched by it. Excuse me for getting a bit emotional, because this is so vulnerable, isn't it? You had a talk with one of the managers here and came up with an interesting name. What was the name you came up with?
Kalula.
And what does Kalula mean?
Kalula means easy, so he was showing a little bit of feistiness when he arrived, but compared to all the other babies that we've had, quite an easy baby. I don't want to jinx it, it's
Yes,
still early
yeah.
days, but yeah, and I think unfortunately, because we've had so many babies in the last few months,
Yeah.
that we just have a lot of experience now,
Yeah, of
so
course.
it is getting
So Kalula,
easier.
could we shorten Kalula to Lula?
Yeah,
And Lula is easy, yes?
yes.
Well, I think you've just named him. I think that's wonderful. I think Lula is the most wonderful name.
Baby
And I
Lula.
hope that we're going to be using it for many years to come.
Yeah.
On close inspection, it was discovered that Lula's health was worse than they first thought. Dr. Mike Toft, director and veterinarian at Zululand Wildlife Treatment Center, was called to determine his condition and decide on a way forward.
But we'll start him on a long-acting antibiotic now. We'll give him some multivits as well, just to try and perk him up a little bit. And I was just saying to Simone, I think we should start looking at nebulizing him as well for a few days.
With a normal mask.
With a mask, yeah. What you do is...
Same we use for humans.
Yeah, but you don't have to. You can use a Coke bottle. Works really well. You just chop the bottom of a 2-liter bottle off and stick the nozzle in the end of and then it goes right over then, okay? What you can do is just take some elastoplast, stick it around the edge so it's not sharp, and then it kind of seals nicely without it digging in.
The fate of orphan rhinos like Lula exists because of the increase in poaching. We visited a school that had been recently built where the children of Zululand could receive an education and learn the importance of animal conservation and protection. This, however, is a long-term solution to a very immediate problem. So I was invited to join a team who are undertaking one of the more instant, effective, but controversial strategies: controlled dehorning.
No matter how many times you do this, it's always an upsetting time.
Must be.
When you have to take this horn off of the
So
rhino.
invasive, isn't it? Yeah.
It's really horrible, but unfortunately this process, especially here in KwaZulu-Natal, has
Yeah.
proved to be a very effective deterrent
Yeah.
to poaching. But but it is hard. Rhinos have horns for a reason.
Absolutely.
But what it does is keeps them alive,
Yeah.
or it improves their chances of staying alive from poaching. But for me, you kind of get upset when you see it because you feel like you're taking something off the rhino.
And it's shocking. I mean, it's certainly new to me. This. I mean, I had heard about dehorning, that one has to go to such an invasive extreme to protect a species that has been with us for so long on this planet, and it is so inhuman, isn't it? Inhumane.
It is. It is. Yeah. I mean, it's a topic that is controversial, I guess, or is upsetting. Let's say to
When you say
some
it's
people.
controversial, do you mean people object to it?
Some people object to it, and
for
they
what
say we
reason?
should leave the rhino with its horn. It's
Yeah.
natural. You're taking something off that it needs, and it has a horn for a reason. There's others that will say better to have a live rhino.
We do find that it reduces the risk of poaching,
Yeah.
but it's not the answer because it almost moves the poaching to an area where they're not dehorning.
Yeah.
So yes, on this reserve we could be protecting our population, but the risk is just moving somewhere else.
Yeah, you're passing the parcel.
And then also in areas where all the animals are dehorned, then poachers have gone into those areas and killed the animals anyway.
And so is that like for bushmeat or other things?
It's also for the horn.
It's also for what remains of the horn.
Yes.
And so, yeah, there's no pain associated with it. It's rather hard to watch if you've never seen it before. It's quite an emotional feeling when you see a rhino having its horn taken off with a chainsaw. But bear in mind that rhino stands a 96% better chance of surviving 2 years than if we leave its horn on. That's how effective our dehorning process has been.
Upon tracking the target rhino, Mike darts the mammal from the air, a high-pressure and skillful procedure. The drug used has taken 30 years to develop and results in the lowest possible risks to the rhino. Within minutes, he's fallen to the ground, completely sedated. Immediately, the team get to work, adding a blindfold and earplugs to ensure the least possible stress from the surrounding commotion. Blood work is taken and embedded microchip scanned so they can confirm the rhino identity. Hair is collected from his tail with a sample of skin carefully cut away to ensure access to a full DNA profile. Finally, Mike fires up his chainsaw and begins the task of removing his horns. He's carried out this procedure 3,000 times before, so wields the power tool with remarkable skill and dexterity, ensuring the cut is as clean and smooth as he can possibly make it. This is my first time seeing it, and even though I know why it's happening and the potential repercussions if it doesn't, I'm both shocked and deeply emotional. It's strange mixed feelings, of course, one gets watching a procedure like this. This, of course, is the price this rhino has to pay to extend its life, but you feel like a prized part of its body is being stolen from him, and I find it deeply, deeply upsetting.
It makes you want to cry, to be honest. The fact that we have to go through this.
With the team cleared, Mike prepares to administer an antidote, another carefully developed drug that will ensure the rhino is awake within minutes. If I could just say, very upset. That was remarkable.
It's quite an emotional thing to watch. We've become very hardened to it simply because this is in the 3,000th odd rhino that I've done now, and but I kind of look at it like we were talking earlier. This rhino, in 2 years' time, you'll be able to revisit him. He's going to be here still.
Yeah.
And if this is what we have to do, well, this is what we have to do.
Absolutely, but it can't help. You think, here is this magnificent animal losing such a prized possession. But
Absolutely.
wonderful work.
Yep. No, and this is the way we've got to do it at the moment.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
don't have a choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
And once he's up, the nice thing, like I said to you before, is to see how well they cope with this
Yeah.
whole procedure.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a traumatic procedure in its looks, but once the rhino's up, they very rarely show any major problems.
That's amazing. And with his permission and watching carefully, I have the privilege of injecting the syringe. And once in, we must move quickly because the speed at which the rhino awakens is very surprising and, if we're in the wrong place, could potentially be very dangerous.
Ordeal.
Thank you so much. We watch the rhino wake from sedation. This is a complete reversal of the sedation with absolutely no ill effects. Finally, he disappears into the thick of the bush to rejoin his crash, the collective term for rhinos. I'm invited to take to the air for one last look. That's magical, isn't it? Yeah, I bet. Do you feel that you're winning?
I think we are winning on some fronts and losing on others. For instance, private reserves are able to protect their rhino to the point where they're on the increase, and we're seeing very good population growth. And we know the state-owned parks and populations are in decline, which is a big gap to close between the two. And that is obviously a major concern. I am concerned for the future of rhinos and pangolins and most of the other species that are being trafficked, because the population is growing, human population is growing at a point where it's becoming increasingly difficult to make environmental issues and wildlife protection issues at the top of people's lists.
Yeah, habitat, etc.
Exactly. When you are battling to feed your family, environmental issues are not quite high on your priority list.
Sure, of course, and totally understandable. I mean, and so it seems to me what I'm getting from this that most important thing that an individual who's interested can do is to support a charity like Helping Rhinos, really.
Absolutely, because they are critical partners for us, and we wouldn't be able to do what we do if it wasn't with support from them.
Yeah. If you had a single message that you could give to the public, what would that message be?
So my message to the public would be, rhinos are in real threat and real danger of going extinct from this planet. So please get behind the work that the likes of Helping Rhinos do to keep them safe and give them a future on this planet.
Wonderful. Before I leave, I want to pay one last visit to Lula Boy to find out whether the antibiotics and nebulizer are having a positive effect. In some ways, he's become the face of the orphanage for me, a totem for everything they represent. Without them, he'd be dead. Another life lost through the effects of poaching.
He had a visit from the vet. He had some antibiotics injected, and the vet suggested that we nebulize him 3 times a day. So we just did a nebulizing session, which he seemed to do really well with. His breathing became much deeper.
Oh, wonderful.
Instead of this rapid, shallow breathing.
Yeah. And the rapid, shallow breathing is because he has pneumonia, is that correct?
Yes.
And the vet obviously gave him some kind of injections for that, did he?
Yeah. Long-acting antibiotics. So it'll last for about 3 days.
Yeah.
And then in 3 days' time, we'll reevaluate, but he'll probably have it again.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Once the antibiotics start kicking in, we hope to see an increase in activity and just, he's basically just drinking and sleeping and peeing and sleeping and drinking and sleeping.
I'll have to keep in touch with him as he grows up now.
Definitely. come visit him in a year and see how he's grown.
Yeah, I shall look forward to that. That would be wonderful. As I embark on my 30-hour journey back to the UK, I reflect on Lulaboy and the other orphans whose mothers have been slaughtered. I reflect on the people who saved them and the money raised to fund their work. And I reflect on the solutions, many of which are effective but controversial. But most of all, I reflect on the fact that there are thousands of rhinos who have been killed by humans for the ubiquitous and pharmaceutically inert chemical that is nothing more than a fingernail. Keratin. It might be my imagination, but he looks ever so slightly bigger.
It's not your imagination, it happens.
Does it?
They grow so quickly.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, in a week, if he's drinking really well, he could probably put on 2-3 kilograms.
Really?
At this age already.
Hi everyone. Well, I hope you found our film as compelling, inspiring, and as deeply moving as I did, as you could see from the film, as I did from my first trip to this remarkable orphanage run by Helping Rhinos. I feel a deep attachment to Lulaboy. He's the most beautiful, beautiful young rhino, and I think Simon's got have you got an update about Lulaboy? How's he doing?
Yeah, so it's been a year since we were there, Peter, at Zululand Rhino Orphanage, and we were in constant contact with Simone, who we've just seen in the film, and Simone has sent through an update on Lula.
Ah, fantastic.
So we're 11 months on, which I think we can play now.
Hi everyone, here's a little update on Lula. Remember that tiny little baby that arrived at our facility last year, April? Well, he's now 11 months old, weighing in at 400 kilograms. As you can see, he really loves his food, always hogging the hay pile. And here he is hanging out with some of his friends, Samson on the left and Mulayo on the right. Thank you guys so much for your support so far.
Well, wow. I mean, hasn't he grown, Simon? What a wonderfully strong and active young man we have in Lulaboy now. It's, again, a great tribute to your team, this great work. He looks so healthy and he looks like he's going to do very, very well.
I think so. He's I mean, it's amazing to see it, isn't it? Like, you know, not even a year on from that tiny little vulnerable calf that we weren't even sure when we left, were we? Whether, you know, the pneumonia, how he was going to react to that as well. And then you see him, as we've just seen him now.
Yeah, transformed, wonderful.
Transformed, incredible. But what it brings home, I suppose, is that, you know, since we were there, and you think, well, you know, Lula's there, but actually, I plan to sit here today and say that since Lula came in and since we left, we've actually taken another 3 orphans into the orphanage.
Really?
But actually, I had a call from Karen, who we saw in the Keratin film, and Simone today, that just a few hours ago we took in another orphan. And this one's particularly heartbreaking, to be honest. So this little one's mum was shot, killed,
God.
Horns removed, but unfortunately this little orphan was also shot. Somewhere in the sort of left, you know. So now we have this new little orphan. We were actually hoping that Simone would join us on a live stream, but obviously events have overtaken us somewhat, and Simone is now busy trying to stabilise this new little calf. It's going to be touch and go for a long time.
Do you have any positive feedback so far, or is it?
Positive, not so much.
Yeah.
She is settled, I believe, But she is struggling to even stand with the short wound. I think the only thing I would say is that we have seen, you know, in the past that, you know, what looks like awful injuries, and these animals have you know, this way of miraculously recovering. So, everybody that's watching, please keep everything crossed for this new little one, that we can, next time we're all together, we can share a story like Lula.
Fantastic.
And I guess it's a good time to remind everybody of kind of the QR code on the screen and the website to donate. So, it costs in the region of around £15,000 to raise a rhino orphan and get it back out into the wild.
Is the £15,000 that covers a period of time, or is it a year?
So normally that sort of is a 3-year period before we would look to release, or they're between 3 and 4 years old is when we look to release rhinos back into the wild.
So it's about 5,000 a year plus for the first year, but
plus for the first year, because obviously you've got that more intensive care, the more intensive veterinary costs. So with this new little one, it's going to be significantly more than the 15,000 because trying to treat a gunshot wound in an orphan is going to need a lot of vet time, a lot of meds. So I think so again, if anyone has been moved tonight and would like to support the work and do all we can, particularly to try and get this new little one and all the other orphans over the line and back into the wild where they belong, please do. And if you're watching on delay, then don't worry, the links will still work if you're watching on delay. And as I said, you can text donate as well. I've got some numbers here. So if you're, I think this is the UK, so if you're in the UK, you can text Rhino 5, as in F-I-V-E, so Rhino F-I-V-E, not the number 5, to 70085, and that will donate £5 to support our work. Or you can text Rhino 10 to 70085 to donate £10, and Rhino 20 to 70085 to donate £20. So,
and I'm sure if you were to put in Rhino 100, you might get £100 donated.
Do you know? Don't try, because I'm not sure. I think we have to set them up individually. If you'd like to go to donate £100, we'd love to receive it though, and you can do that by scanning the QR code or going to helpingrhinos.org/Keratin. The team on the ground, Simone Carr and Zululand Rhino Orphanage, really need our help, our support to get these animals
absolutely back to health again. The
Yeah.
work they do there is absolutely great, but they do need your support. So please do, as Simon says, follow the donate button there and give your 2 or your 5 or your £10. It will be really, really well used.
And I think we have some questions.
We do indeed, Simon. I've got a question here for you, in fact, if I can give it to you now. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah. Very good.
This first question is, we hear so much about poaching and bad news. Do you feel like we are making progress in protecting the rhino?
It's a very good question. Are we making progress? I think the answer is yes, we are making some progress. If you go back a decade, we were losing just over 1,200 rhinos a year to poachers in South Africa alone. As I mentioned at the start of this broadcast, we just heard that we lost 499 last year. So yes, we are making some progress, but are we making enough progress? Absolutely not. 499 rhinos lost a year is over 1.3 rhinos on average a day.
And horrible.
And that sort of that number goes up and down. And during a full moon, which is typically when poachers typically come out because there's a lot of natural light, they can move around better undetected. So we have a lot of work still to do if we're really to get on top of this problem. I mean, you can imagine losing 1 rhino a day is horrible. Unacceptable.
Just horrible. Someone's asked, how can we help when we're not in Africa?
So again, a good question. Not everybody can get to Africa, and it doesn't, helping doesn't mean that you have to go and be hands-on, of course. So I think helping there are many ways that you can do that. So getting behind organizations like Helping Rhinos, helping us raise awareness. It still amazes me how many people I talk to who have no idea. I tell them what I do. They have no idea that rhinos are being poached, no idea that rhinos are threatened to such an extent. So I think get behind Helping Rhinos, follow us on social media, follow on the website, tell your friends and family about what it is the rhinos are facing. And of course, unfortunately, everything in this world comes back to money. It costs a lot of money to raise a rhino orphan. It costs a lot of money to put anti-poaching rangers on patrol. It costs a lot of money to put our eyes in the sky plane in the air and keep that operational.
Yeah.
It costs a lot of money to even look at how do we bring more habitat in. So look and support us and get in contact. Exactly, just there. Get in contact with us. And there's many different ways that people can help. So we're here to help you find out what works best for you to help us.
Okay, another question here is, shouldn't we be protecting more than just rhinos?
We should. Rhinos are not the only endangered animal, of course. And even at Helping Rhinos, even though we're called Helping Rhinos, we protect a lot more than just rhinos. What we have is rhinos are our flagships, is the flagship species of the work that we do. But and particularly in the areas we're working in, where poaching is so prevalent of rhinos, and the price of rhino horn on the black market is so huge that they become the main target.
Yeah.
So obviously there are other things. We saw pangolins in the film, which is the most trafficked animal. And interestingly, the pangolin scales, which is what they're trafficked for, is just the same as rhino horn. It's keratin.
Keratin, yeah.
And so by protecting rhinos, by default, we're protecting the environment that rhinos live in, and therefore rhinos don't live on their own. So by protecting rhinos, we're protecting elephant and lion and pangolin and everything else.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's just that, our flagship species is rhino because they are one of the most endangered.
Absolutely.
And I love them.
Of course, as indeed I do as well, and I hope all of you who are watching love them too, or have grown to love them from this film.
I actually have a couple of questions coming for you as well,
good.
Peter. So what did you feel when you first saw Lula arrive into the Zululand Rhino Orphanage?
It was the most remarkable feeling, and this film brought it all back to me this evening. The first thing I felt was a huge desire to protect something so vulnerable. And there was also a kind of contradiction in a strange way, because even a baby rhino looks quite formidable. I mean, their physical structure, their skin, although they're very soft to the touch, you think, oh, this is such a strong creature that it'll survive whatever. But then, of course, you realize that a baby rhino is as vulnerable as a puppy. And so I just felt enormous empathy and compassion for the creature, and of course I fell in love with it as well.
And I think that came out in the film, and having been there with you and seeing it, in between the takes of the film, you really could.
It was
could
deeply
see that
moving,
as well.
deeply moving experience for me. Yes.
And I guess another question, talking of deeply moving, is what do you think about the practice of dehorning?
Well, I mean, that was possibly for me the most upsetting moment during our filming, to think that this magnificent prehistoric creature has to sacrifice such an amazing part of its physical being so that it will give it the chance of not being killed by a poacher, in order to have keratin, in order to have my fingernail, and to sell it, and people who buy it believing that rhino horn is going to improve whatever it does in terms of the reasons for all the people taking it. I don't mean to just say that their libido and stuff like that, but people take it for all sorts of reasons. And you just want to say to them, look, just cut out the middleman and chew your fingernails and let these magnificent, magnificent creatures live.
Yeah, I think definitely that's a message we should all take around the world.
Yeah.
Another question is, what made you want to get involved with rhino conservation and helping rhinos?
Well, you really. Well, it was. I mean, I remember we met some years ago, and you invited me along to an event that you were doing just off Piccadilly somewhere. I seem to remember, but must have been 8 or 10 years ago, and I just was very, very impressed with the presentation. I mean, I knew that there was a problem with rhinos, but I didn't realize just how big the problem is. And the more I watched the work that you and Helping Rhinos are doing, the more impressed I became, one, with the fantastic work that you do, but getting to know rhinos better and getting to kind of think, we can't lose this creature. It is so valuable, and we have to keep it on our planet. And all of these wonderful creatures, they are keystone species because they provide such a wonderful health package to our planet. And our planet is so vital to all of us. When the planet goes, we all go, like they say of the bee. When the bee goes, we all go. And the rhino contributes through its grazing and the passing of its feces into the soil, and the way it stomps around on the soil and kind of enlivens the soil. It's so valuable to our planet, and by being valuable to our planet, it's so valuable to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember that first time you came along, and you gave me a nice segue into letting everyone know that we have another event this year on the 6th of June. So if you are in the UK, watching in the UK, put in your diary the 6th of June for an event in London that we're calling Sundowner Celebration. Again, keep an eye on the website and our social media, and sign up for the newsletter to get all the information. So we're really looking forward to that again. Yeah. I'm just going to see, we've got some more questions coming in. Olivia is busy passing us questions as we go. Right. Let's just see what we've got here. So what is the milk composition? I guess it's probably more of a question for me.
It's definitely.
And even that, I'm not sure I can describe exactly what the milk composition is, but it's special rhino orphan composition. So you may or may not know that the closest living relatives to the rhino is a tapir, the horse, and the zebra. So the rhino milk composition is made up closely to what we would give to horses, for example.
Really, that's extraordinary.
You wouldn't think that looking at
them.
No,
you certainly wouldn't. No.
So it's a specially formulated, that's been worked on over a number of years. I remember when we first started rescuing rhino orphans like a decade ago, we really didn't know anything. So it was trial and error, and there was a few experts out in the field that were sort of pulling this together. So everyone talks to each other. We're learning from those best practices. Yeah. So that's there. Let me just see now. What is done in demand countries to change views on rhino horn? Again, another good question. So demand countries in China and Vietnam,
and Southeast Asia. Yeah. Well, I think there's a huge amount of indigenous groups and charities that are working really, really hard in all of those demand countries to actually show how futile it is to pursue any medicinal value from things like rhino horn or bear bile or tiger bones. It's. I don't want to be insulting to a whole sort of farmer belief, but it is. There are better synthetically produced things that are going to improve people's health, rather than taking bits from animals that are just a kind of a smokescreen, a falsehood, really. So, but I am delighted, because I work with a lot of groups throughout the world. I'm delighted with the amount of indigenous support there is against all of this appalling hunting and taking of body parts from animals who need them more than we do.
Yeah, and I think we are seeing a change as sort of the next generations in the likes of Vietnam and China.
Yeah,
we are definitely seeing a better understanding of using animal parts within their culture. We still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
For us at Helping Rhinos, we really focus more on what I call the protection rather than the prevention side.
Yeah.
I think the prevention side is much better run by local organisations. So you
Absolutely
get local
agree,
people from local. I mean, I've been asked many times, why do I not go to Vietnam and give some talks? Well, I'm just another Westerner would be come across as preaching a different way of life. And
Well, it wouldn't be out of place, I have to say, because there are, I mean, one of the greatest exports I think we have in the UK is animal welfare and animal rights. And throughout the world, the thing that I love is that you will somewhere in every country in the world find a Brit there doing extraordinary work for animals. But the ones who do it correctly are working hand in hand with the indigenous groups that are actually spreading the word, as you're saying, faster and more positively, because it's their country, basically. Yeah.
And that's, for our approach, that's the way we would do it, is to partner with local organisations that I think would be much more effective.
Absolutely.
So a question coming from Anne. Hello, Anne. Glad you're watching. What can we do as kids to spread the word? So I know Anne, he comes to all of our events. He's a big supporter of Volpagitae. And he does an awful lot. But I think
well done, Anne. Well done.
As kids generally, I think there's a lot you can do. Kids have a big influence on their parents.
Indeed.
They might not realise they do, but if you can help spread the word and get your classmates engaged and telling your classmates about it and getting your classmates going home telling parents about it, it's all about that spreading the word. And I think that's what kids can do. And kids can be very inspiring. Coming up, when they get passionate about getting behind a cause and wanting to save wildlife, an animal, or whatever it is, I think that inspires the adult world quite a lot.
I agree. I believe that all children are born with a natural compassion, which sadly the world, our parents, they kind of beat that out of us. So what I would say, Anne, is that hang on to your natural compassion and your care for all wildlife and all animals, because you are the future, and impress that same empathy and kindness and respect to all of your peer group, and you'll be fighting the big fight for us all in the future.
Cool, very good. Another question come in is, how many poachers have been caught recently and what sentences have they been given? Again, it's a good question. We are well, in the decade, 12 years that we've been going, I think we've definitely seen a better conviction rate. But it's also true to say that conviction rate, for me at least, is still way too low from where it needs to be. We see some longer sentences being given out, particularly in South Africa, anything from 10 plus years. And that also is a step in the right direction. When I started helping rhinos, it was merely a slap on the wrist and not a lot more. But we clearly still have a long way to go. Unfortunately, there is a fair degree of level of corruption within the countries we're talking about. And I've heard examples of poachers being caught red-handed and arrested something like 4 or 5 times in 6 weeks because they're out and out on bail.
So they bribe and get away with it.
Yeah. So
do you have a figure? Excuse me, interrupting you. And would you say over the last decade, how many rhinos were on the planet, as it were, 10 years ago, and how many are here now? Do you have a figure for that? Yeah,
so it's interesting. So while we've been losing more to poaching, the numbers have gone down and down and down every year since I started helping rhinos. No, not the poaching number, the population number.
Oh, the population,
I
see.
And that was one of our goals, is how do we stabilise and increase rhino populations, and that has gone down every year since we started. But last year, for the first time, that population, both black and white rhino in Africa, actually increased slightly.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So we started to see that increase. And I mentioned the poaching numbers have dropped from 1,200 a decade ago to 500 now.
Well, that's phenomenal progress, isn't it?
At least we are seeing population growth. I mean, that's the first step. I've often been asked about what is our goal? Is our goal to stop rhino poaching? I think you've got to be more realistic than that. We're not going to stop rhino poaching overnight. What we have to do is reduce it and reduce it in stages. And the first level of reduction is get it to a level where the population at least is increasing through births. And we'll do that through better protected areas, better what we call rhino strongholds. So more areas where the rhinos can breed. So I think that's an important step in terms of what we do.
Wonderful.
And so we're kind of starting to get towards that first step, but we're still losing too many. We're still on the prefaces. So at least the population is at least stable and not in decline, and that should give us hope that what we're doing is paying dividends. Yes, it's a long road, and we've got a long way to go, but should give us hope.
Indeed, absolutely.
So let me just see if we have any others here. What would happen to the KwaZulu-Natal orphans if the orphanage wasn't there?
Well, that's a good question.
So unfortunately, this is a very simple answer, which is they would probably nearly all die.
Yeah.
So,
Horrible.
as I said, it is the only rescue and rehabilitation centre in the region. There are other orphanages across South Africa, and some in Care for Wild in the Kruger area, for example, has done a phenomenal job over a number of years rescuing the orphans from Kruger, and that's kind of where we find ourselves now, in that position in KwaZulu-Natal, and rescuing orphans from there. But if you didn't have that facility that you could get orphans to within a very few hours, the chances of survival decreases.
I'm sure, yes.
You have to start taking them on a 6, 7, 8 hour, 10-hour car journey, for example, somewhere. So it's incredibly important that we have that facility. It's also, of course, incredibly important that we have the rangers on the ground to be able to find the orphans.
Absolutely.
We've
and to also help stop poaching.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Stop the poaching. But if it does happen, are there orphans? Let's find them before it's too late.
Indeed, absolutely.
Because vulnerable. You can imagine a vulnerable orphan is, there for lions and whatever if it's got no mum to protect.
So the short answer to that question is, if helping rhinos didn't exist, it would be an absolute disaster.
Yes. Let's simply put it that way. Right, what other questions do we have here? I think, do we have any more? Let me just have a look at the thing. I'm being handed some more here. Can you volunteer at the orphanage, and how do you apply? That's a very good question, simply because the orphanage is run by the Zululand Conservation Trust, is the umbrella organisation that we partner with. And Zululand Conservation Trust is about to launch a volunteer program that is looking at wider conservation, but includes the orphanage. So you will get involved in the orphanage, but you'll also get involved in some of the community work that the teams do as well, which is, again, vitally important. So yes, you will very soon be able to volunteer there. And I think the best way is probably send us an email or a message through our social media. You can contact us on email at rhino@helpingrhinos.org, or send us a message on social media, and we will liaise directly with the team on the ground and get back to you.
Wonderful.
Another question then coming is, can rhinos raised in zoos in captivity ever be released into the wild?
Well, the quick answer to that is no, really, isn't it?
It's not, actually.
Is it not?
It can be released into the wild.
Can
There
they?
are a number of zoos that do breed and release back into the wild, or at least into the semi-wild. So when you take captive bred animals of any, whether it's rhinos or whatever, you don't pick them out of a zoo and put them into the wild and hope that they survive, because they're not going to survive. So often what you would have is like a semi-wild release. So a little bit we have with the northern white rhinos on picture 2.
But that would be a semi-wild release. That wouldn't be into the wild, though.
It would be more, I suppose, into their natural habitat. So if I look
at a controlled
release, and then what you would do is, so it's often a multi-generational release.
Yeah.
So rather than just taking all animals from a zoo and releasing them, that would be a death sentence.
I mean, because if you have an animal in the zoo, just by the nature of where it's living, it is forced to be human-friendly. And the worst thing that any animal can have is a human-friendly attitude in the wild, because they're going to go towards the poacher, and the poacher's going to kill them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
particularly.
Yeah.
But we have seen it work. So you would breed them in their natural habitat, and then that generation that was born in a semi-captive area would then ultimately be released.
Well,
back
maybe
out into the wild, so.
would it be fair to say that a wild animal born into a sanctuary situation as opposed to a zoo, because zoos by definition are there for the human to have a degree of dominance in terms of their visits over the animal, rather than the reverse, where the animal should always have the dominance over the humans.
Yeah, and so maybe that sanctuary is that halfway house I was describing.
Exactly,
you take it from the zoo to a sanctuary. Ultimately, you breed in the sanctuary, and then the calves for those animals that you sent back were there. And they can. As I said, we've seen it with northern white rhinos that were sent back to Kenya from European zoos. They take a while to adapt. And
maybe it's true that with smaller animals, rather than the ace kind of predators and the big animals, maybe that is more effective with smaller animals than with animals that are so wonderful as rhinos.
And you can. I mean, there's a zoo in the UK people may be aware of it, that the Aspinall Zoo's Port Lim and Howlands, but they have a good reputation of and track record of actually taking animals from their wildlife parks in the UK and releasing them. I mean, there's lots of gorilla videos you can find online.
Absolutely,
as well. So it can happen, and it does happen.
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions? I'm getting one more question coming in.
Is it about my availability?
Well, let me say yes. Before we get to your availability, do rhino horns grow again once they've been cut? And I think that's actually a really good way to kind of do that. So the answer is yes. As we've said many times now, and as the name of the film implies, the rhino horn is made of keratin, the same substance as our hair and our fingernails. So if you cut your hair and your fingernails, it grows back. And therefore a rhino horn, if you cut it, will grow back as long as you cut it above that growth plate that Simone was referring to in the film. It will grow back. So it has about a 4-year growth cycle to grow back.
Okay,
Dehorn every sort of 2 years, really, because while it wouldn't fully grow back, it would be enough to be attractive to poachers anyway. So it does grow back, and cutting it while you have to give an anaesthetic to the rhino, simply because you can't walk up to a rhino and chainsaw its horn off, of course.
Absolutely, yeah.
But actually, if you could do that, it would feel pressure but no pain, and you would be able to do that. So,
absolutely, as was evident with that remarkable vet who did it in the film. I just found it extraordinary, that.
Yeah.
Do you think I could just add one thing as we're drawing to the end now of this remarkable work you do, Sam, and I admire you and your team so much. But for all of you who've checked in this evening, the rhino, as well as other keystone species, are vital to our lives and our planet. And from my point of view, of course, please do support and donate to helping rhinos, but also remember that intrinsically a part of you is your kindness and your empathy and your compassion. And if you hang on to all of those elements in yourself and don't let them be corroded, you are going to want to help to save our wonderful wildlife. So I would encourage you to concentrate on that deep within yourselves, because I think it's so important. And added to that, it's so important to donate to this wonderful charity.
Thank you, Peter. Just being a message said, apparently the transmission dropped out for 10 seconds. Would you believe, when I was talking about the little calf that's come in? So,
really?
So just to reiterate, if anyone did miss it, we have taken in a new rhino orphan today, whose mum was shot, and the little calf has also been shot and is being cared for by Simone and the team at the moment, trying to stabilise the little one, and let's keep everything crossed that she can make it, and we're talking like Lullaby, let's hope, and please keep donating to make sure we can do all we can from wherever we are around the world to support Simone and the team on the ground, and all of the work that we support helping rhinos across Africa as well. So I think that's probably about what we have, Peter.
I think that's it. Well, Sam, it's been great. Thank you very much for this evening. Thank you very much for being with us.
Yeah, and thank you, Peter, for your support for us. And I think, having you out there make this film, for me, has been incredible in terms of awareness raising of the cause. So
fabulous.
Thank you very much. And as you say, thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. It will be available to watch again, so please share it, share the links. We'll put it out, but please share the links with your friends. The more people we can get having eyes on this film, the better, and the greater impact it will have. So
absolutely.
Thank you very much. Have a good morning, have a good afternoon, have a good evening, wherever you're watching, and we will see you all again soon.
Bye-bye.